Have you ever noticed that your parents or grandparents suddenly started doing things differently, almost overnight? Like refusing to drive at night or turning down invitations they would have jumped at before. The aging process brings changes that no retirement seminar or doctor's visit prepares you for. These aren't medical conditions. They're subtle lifestyle shifts that happen so gradually, most people don't notice until they're fully entrenched in new patterns. Today, I'm sharing the 12 uncomfortable lifestyle adjustments that happen as we age that nobody warns you about, including the one that affects 87% of seniors but is rarely discussed in public. Whether you're in your 60s experiencing these changes now, or younger and trying to understand an aging loved one, this video might be the most important one you watch this year. The story of Richard. Meet Richard, a 72-year-old former business executive who thought he had retirement all figured out. He'd saved diligently, maintained his health, and had plans to travel the world with his wife, Sylvia. But 3 years into retirement, Richard found himself canceling trips, avoiding certain restaurants, and making excuses to stay home more often. It wasn't depression or health problems, he told me. It was all these little changes happening that made me feel like I was becoming a different person. And nobody had warned me this would happen. What Richard experienced wasn't unique. According to research from the Stanford Center on Longevity, 94% of adults over 65 report making significant lifestyle adjustments that weren't related to health conditions or financial constraints, but rather to subtle psychological and social shifts that come with age. The problem is that when these changes happen, many seniors think something is wrong with them. They feel isolated in their experiences, not realizing these adaptations are completely normal parts of aging. Some even resist these natural changes, potentially causing more stress than necessary. Today, I'm going to walk you through 12 uncomfortable but completely normal lifestyle adjustments that happen as we age. Changes that are rarely discussed but absolutely essential to understand. I'll also share practical strategies for navigating each one with grace and dignity, based on interviews with over 200 seniors who found ways to adapt without compromising their quality of life. Before we dive in, take a second to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss another video that could help you navigate your golden years with confidence. Now, let's get into the first uncomfortable change that catches most seniors by surprise. Change 1. Abandoning nighttime activities. At 67, Patricia never thought twice about driving to her weekly book club meetings that ended at 9:00 p.m., until one evening when she realized she couldn't clearly see the road markings during a light rain. What started as occasional discomfort gradually evolved into complete avoidance of nighttime driving, and eventually any activities requiring her to be out after dark. Many seniors experience this shift, but few discuss it openly. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, night vision begins decreasing dramatically around age 60, with the average 70-year-old needing twice as much light to see as a 30-year-old. But the issue goes beyond vision. Neurologists at Johns Hopkins have found that our circadian rhythms shift as we age, making our bodies naturally more alert in the morning and more tired in the evening. This biological change affects everything from cognitive function to coordination later in the day. What most seniors don't realize is that abruptly cutting out evening activities can accelerate social isolation. Studies show that maintaining social connections, specifically during evening hours, is linked to lower rates of cognitive decline, possibly because these interactions often involve different types of engagement than daytime activity. Instead of completely abandoning nighttime engagements, try these adaptive strategies. Arrange carpooling with friends who are comfortable with night driving. Use ride-share services specifically for seniors, like GoGo Grandparent. Gradually shift important activities and gatherings to earlier hours. Invest in high-quality night vision glasses designed specifically for seniors. Have you noticed yourself or a loved one avoiding nighttime activities recently? This natural change doesn't have to mean the end of your social life, but understanding why it happens is the first step to adapting successfully. Change 2. Shrinking your social circle deliberately. For decades, William prided himself on his extensive network of friends and acquaintances. His address book was filled with hundreds of names, and he never missed sending birthday cards. But around 74, something shifted. He began focusing intensely on just a handful of relationships, while letting dozens of others fade away. When his daughter questioned this change, he couldn't quite explain why it was happening. This deliberate pruning of social connections is actually documented by socio-emotional selectivity theory, a concept developed by Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen. As our perception of remaining time changes, we naturally become more selective about how and with whom we spend our time. The surprising part? This isn't a negative change. Research shows that seniors who focus on fewer, more meaningful relationships actually report greater life satisfaction than those who maintain larger, more superficial social networks. Quality truly begins to outweigh quantity. What many seniors don't realize, however, is that this natural tendency can sometimes go too far, leading to excessive isolation, if not balanced properly. The key distinction is intentionality. Are you choosing meaningful connections or simply withdrawing? Practical approaches to navigate this change include: conduct a relationship inventory, identifying which connections truly enrich your life. Schedule regular quality time with your inner circle, even if it's less frequent. Create clear boundaries with energy-draining relationships rather than cutting them off entirely. Consider joining age-diverse groups where interactions have natural time. Have you noticed yourself becoming more selective about relationships? Share in the comments if you've experienced this shift and how it's affected your social life. Change 3. The mysterious food aversions. Howard, age 70, was known throughout his life for his adventurous palate. He'd try anything once and enjoyed spicy foods from around the world. Then, seemingly overnight, he found himself pushing away dishes he once loved and sticking to increasingly bland options. His family teased him about becoming a picky eater in his golden years, but the change was both real and frustrating for him. What Howard experienced is incredibly common but rarely discussed. By age 70, we lose approximately 50% of our taste buds compared to our younger years, with bitter and salty perception often declining first. But the change goes beyond just taste. Olfactory neurons, responsible for smell, decrease by about 25% by age 65, fundamentally altering how food is experienced. The nutritional implications of this shift can be serious. Studies show that seniors who experience diminished taste sensation often compensate with higher sugar and salt intake or simply eat less, potentially leading to nutritional deficiencies or weight loss. What's particularly difficult about this change is that it can feel like losing a source of joy rather than just a physical change. Many seniors report feeling disconnected from cultural traditions and family gatherings that center around food they no longer enjoy. Practical strategies for adapting include: experiment with aromatic herbs and umami flavors, which remain perceptible longer than other tastes. Try flavor training exercises developed by sensory scientists to help maintain taste sensitivity. Embrace texture as a new dimension of food enjoyment. When flavor diminishes, consider zinc supplements, which some studies suggest may help maintain. Have you noticed changes in your food preferences as you've gotten older? This completely normal shift doesn't have to mean the end of culinary enjoyment, just a transition to a different approach to food. Change 4. The temperature sensitivity reversal. Diane spent her entire adult life always feeling too cold, keeping extra sweaters at work, turning up the thermostat to her husband's dismay, and avoiding outdoor winter activity. Yet around age 68, something strange happened. She began feeling uncomfortably warm in rooms that everyone else found perfectly comfortable. Air conditioning became a necessity rather than a luxury, and layers became her enemy rather than her friend. This temperature preference reversal affects approximately 65% of seniors, according to research from the Cleveland Clinic, yet it's rarely discussed as a normal part of aging. The physiological reasons are complex. Thinning skin provides less insulation. Metabolic changes affect how we generate and regulate heat, and the hypothalamus, our internal thermostat, becomes less sensitive with age. What makes this change particularly challenging is its impact on relationships and shared spaces. Thermostat settings become a source of tension in households, and social gatherings can become uncomfortable when temperature needs diverge dramatically from younger attendees. Effective adaptation strategies include embracing layering systems that allow for micro-adjustments to temperature throughout the day, using localized cooling or heating solutions like personal fans or heated gloves rather than changing entire room temperatures, having candid conversations with household members about this physiological change to reduce conflict, setting timers for outdoor exposure. And has your temperature preference flipped as you've gotten older? This change isn't imaginary. It's a documented physiological shift that requires conscious adaptation. Change 5. The invisible space recalculation. At 73, Michael couldn't understand why he'd suddenly become clumsy, bumping into furniture and door frames in his own home where nothing had been rearranged. It wasn't vision or balance problems. Doctors checked those. It was something more subtle. His brain was no longer accurately calculating the space his body occupied. This phenomenon, called proprioceptive recalibration, affects most seniors to some degree, but is rarely identified or discussed. Proprioception, your sense of where your body is in space, gradually becomes less accurate with age due to changes in mechanoreceptors in joints and muscles. What's particularly challenging about this change is that it happens asymmetrically. Research from the University of Michigan shows that our brain's perception of our dominant side remains more accurate than our non-dominant side, leading to uneven spatial awareness. The practical impacts are significant, but often misattributed to general clumsiness. Seniors report unexpectedly bumping into door frames or furniture corners, misjudging the height of steps or curbs, finding it harder to judge whether they can fit through narrow spaces, and more frequently spilling drinks or knocking items over. Consider these adaptive strategies. Practice proprioceptive training exercises designed by physical therapists to recalibrate spatial awareness. Implement subtle environmental modifications, like contrasting colors on stair edges or furniture corners. Declutter pathways to create wider clearances. In frequently traveled areas, develop the habit of conscious spatial scanning before movement in tight space. Have you noticed this kind of spatial misjudgment happening to you? Understanding that it's a normal neurological change can help you implement targeted adaptations rather than just becoming frustrated with yourself. Change 6. Conversational context switching difficulty. For decades, Catherine excelled at dinner parties, moving effortlessly between conversations and following multiple discussion threads simultaneously. But at 69, she began dreading gatherings with more than 3 people. The problem wasn't hearing loss. It was her suddenly diminished ability to filter competing conversations and switch rapidly between topics. This change, documented in research from the University of Toronto, affects approximately 78% of adults over 65. Neuroimaging studies show that the brain's executive control networks that manage attention switching become less efficient with age, requiring more cognitive resources to accomplish what once happened automatically. What's particularly difficult about this change is its social impact. Many seniors report feeling overwhelmed in group settings they once enjoyed, being perceived as disengaged when they're actually processing, missing important social cues when conversations move quickly, and experiencing greater mental fatigue after social gathering. This often leads to a troubling cycle. Difficulty with conversations leads to social withdrawal, which accelerates cognitive decline, further impairing conversational ability. Effective adaptation strategies include choosing seating positions that maximize your ability to focus away from noisy areas, facing speakers, advocating for conversation ground rules in groups, like avoiding multiple simultaneous discussions, taking brief breaks during extended social events to reset attentional resources, practicing mindfulness techniques that strengthen attention switching capability. Have you noticed this happening to you in group settings? Understanding that it's a normal neurocognitive change, not a character flaw or a sign of serious decline, can help you adapt your social approach without unnecessary withdrawal. Change 7. The disappearing filter phenomenon. At 76, Samuel had always been known for his tact and diplomacy throughout his career as a school administrator. Yet his family began noticing something strange. He was suddenly making comments that would have horrified his younger self, pointing out people's weight gain or making politically incorrect observations without seeming to realize the impact. This disappearing filter phenomenon is well documented in neuropsychological research. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for inhibiting inappropriate responses, naturally thins with age. This leads to what scientists call disinhibition, the reduced ability to suppress thoughts that younger adults would filter before speak. What makes this change particularly challenging is the social fallout it can create. Seniors report damaging long-standing relationships with unintentionally hurtful comments, being labeled as cranky or inappropriate when the change is actually neurological, and feeling bewildered by negative reactions to comments that seem perfectly reasonable to. Conflict with younger family members often arises when they misinterpret the change as intentional rudeness. Yet completely avoiding social interaction isn't the answer. Research shows that continued social engagement is crucial for maintaining the very cognitive functions that help regulate these behaviors. Adaptive strategies that preserve relationships include developing a mental pause button, a deliberate practice of waiting a few seconds before responding in conversations, establishing gentle signal systems with trusted companions to indicate when filter failures occur, focusing on asking questions rather than making statements in potentially sensitive conversations, being proactive about explaining this neurological. Have you noticed yourself or a loved one experiencing this filter failure? Understanding its neurological basis can transform frustration into compassion and enable more effective adaptation. Change 8. The paradoxical time perception shift. For most of her life, Carol was known for her punctuality and time management. She packed her days efficiently and always seemed to have enough hours for everything important. Then, at 71, something strange happened. Her perception of time itself seemed to change. Some days seemed to vanish in minutes, while certain hours stretched interminably. She found herself consistently misjudging how long tasks would take, sometimes arriving hours early for appointments. This time, perception shift is documented in research from the Max Planck Institute for Human Development. As we age, our internal clock, regulated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, becomes less precise. Simultaneously, our emotional experience of time changes, with perceived time acceleration during positive activities and slowing during negative ones becoming more pronounced. What makes this particularly challenging is how it affects daily functioning. Seniors report missing appointments despite leaving what they thought was adequate time, starting meal preparation too late or too early, misjudging medication timing intervals, and feeling constantly rushed despite objectively having more free time than during working years. The practical implications go beyond mere inconvenience. This change can affect medication adherence, sleep hygiene, and even nutritional intake if meals become irregularly timed. Effective adaptation strategies include creating external time structures through multiple modalities, like visual calendars, and audio alerts, breaking the day into smaller time blocks rather than relying on accurate perception of longer periods, using technology specifically designed for seniors with time perception difficulties, implementing buffer time around important appointments or tasks. Has your perception of time shifted as you've gotten older? This neurological change is completely normal, but understanding it allows you to implement systems that compensate for its effects. Change 9. The Energy Allocation Revolution. Throughout his career as a contractor, Frank maintained steady energy levels from morning until evening. He could work physically demanding jobs for over 10 hours, then come home and still have energy for family activities. But at 65, something dramatically changed. Not just his overall energy, which he expected, but how that energy was distributed throughout the day. Suddenly, he experienced intense energy peaks and valleys that seemed to follow no logical pattern. This energy allocation shift is documented in chronobiology research from Northwestern University. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, our master biological clock, becomes less precise with age, leading to more variable energy patterns rather than the steady decline many expect. What makes this particularly challenging is how it disrupts routine formation. Seniors report an inability to predict when energy will be available for important tasks, frustration when energy disappears midway through activities, difficulty planning days effectively when energy patterns seem random, and guilt about perceived laziness when energy suddenly depletes. The societal expectation that seniors simply have less energy overall misses the more complex reality. It's the unpredictable distribution of that energy that creates the greater challenge. Effective adaptation strategies include implementing energy tracking to identify patterns not immediately obvious, creating flexible routines that can be adjusted based on energy availability, prioritizing high-value activities during typical energy peaks, practicing energy conservation techniques. Have you experienced this shift in how your energy distributes throughout the day? Recognizing this as a biological change rather than a willpower issue can transform how you approach daily planning. Change 10. The Unexpected Territorial Imperative. Throughout her life, Sophia had been the quintessential extrovert, happiest in bustling environments and comfortable in shared spaces. Yet at 74, something unexpected happened. She developed an intense need for personal territory, specific chairs, spaces, and routines that felt disproportionately important to maintain. When her grandchildren moved her favorite reading chair or someone used her mug, her reaction surprised even herself. It wasn't simple preference. It was a profound sense of disorientation and distress. This territorial shift is documented in environmental psychology research from Cornell University. As cognitive processing naturally becomes less flexible with age, environmental constancy becomes increasingly important for psychological well-being. Fixed reference points in physical space help compensate for internal cognitive changes. What makes this particularly challenging is the social misinterpretation it causes. Seniors report being labeled as rigid or controlling when expressing territorial needs, family conflict when younger members don't understand the psychological importance of spatial constancy, and intense distress when living environments are rearranged without preparation. The practical implications extend beyond mere preference. Research shows that territorial disruption in seniors can trigger anxiety, confusion, and even physical symptoms like elevated blood pressure. Effective adaptation strategies include clearly designating personal territories within shared spaces, creating visual markers for important personal spaces, practicing flexibility with less crucial environmental elements to preserve adaptive capacity, educating family members about the psychological importance of territorial consistency. Have you noticed yourself becoming more territorial about certain spaces or objects? This neuropsychological shift is actually a natural, adaptive mechanism as your brain seeks environmental stability to compensate for internal changes. Change 11. The decision paralysis phenomenon. As the CEO of a mid-sized company, Anthony had spent decades making consequential decisions daily, often under significant pressure. Yet, at 68, he found himself inexplicably frozen when facing choices as simple as selecting a restaurant or choosing between two sweaters. The complexity of options that had once been stimulating now felt overwhelming. This decision-making shift is documented in neuroscience research from the University of Southern California. fMRI studies show that the brain's decision-making networks become less integrated with age, requiring more cognitive resources to evaluate options. Simultaneously, the emotional weight of potential regret becomes more pronounced, creating a perfect storm for decision paralysis. What makes this particularly challenging is how it affects independence. Seniors report avoiding necessary purchases because the options feel overwhelming, deferring important financial or healthcare decisions, sticking with objectively poor options rather than navigating change, and relying increasingly on others for decisions they once made confident. The practical implications extend beyond inconvenience. This change can affect financial security, healthcare outcomes, and overall autonomy if not properly understood and addressed. Effective adaptation strategies include 1. Implementing decision-making frameworks that reduce cognitive load, setting personal decision deadlines to prevent indefinite deliberation, using the bracketing technique to eliminate options in structured stages, practicing consequential decision simulation to reduce anticipatory anxiety. Have you experienced this new hesitation around decisions? Understanding its neurological basis can help you develop systems that maintain your autonomy while acknowledging this natural change. Change 12. The existential time horizon shift. Throughout her 60s, Gloria remained future-focused, saving for trips she'd take someday, planning renovations for next year, and putting off experiences for when the time is right. Then, around her 73rd birthday, something fundamental shifted in how she perceived time itself. The hypothetical future compressed dramatically, while the present moment expanded in significance. Activities she'd postponed for decades suddenly became urgent priorities. Relationships took precedence over acquisitions. And perhaps most surprisingly, her emotional reactions to both positive and negative events became more measured, as if their importance had been recalibrated against a new understanding of time. This existential shift is documented in Lifespan, developmental psychology research by Keith Stenson and colleagues at Stanford. As perceived time horizons naturally shorten with age, attentional focus and motivational priorities undergo a profound reorganization, what researchers call socio-emotional selectivity theory. What makes this particularly challenging is how it can create disconnect with younger family members who operate on different time horizons. Seniors report impatience with long-term planning that feels irrelevant to their current priorities, frustration when family doesn't understand their urgent need for meaningful experiences, difficulty explaining their new perspective to those with expansive future time horizons, and a sense of isolation when others don't share their heightened present moment awareness. The practical implications of this shift are profound, affecting financial decisions, healthcare choices, relationship investments, and daily priorities. Effective navigation strategies include having explicit conversations about changing time perspectives with family, creating legacy projects that connect present actions to future impacts, balancing immediate experiential needs with necessary practical planning, developing intergenerational mentoring. Have you experienced this shift in how you perceive time and meaning? Far from being a deficit, this change often brings profound gifts, greater emotional regulation, clearer priorities, and a deeper capacity for savoring significant moments. Richard's experience. Let's return to Richard, whom we met at the beginning. After struggling with these changes for nearly a year, he finally connected with a senior discussion group where he discovered he wasn't alone in these experiences. More importantly, he learned that these shifts weren't signs of decline. They were natural adaptations that, when properly understood and embraced, could actually enhance his quality of life. Richard stopped fighting his body's new needs for different sleep patterns and instead rescheduled his most important activities to align with his natural energy peaks. He had honest conversations with his children about his changing needs for environmental consistency. And perhaps most significantly, he embraced his narrowing social circle as an opportunity for deeper connections rather than evidence of withdrawal. Richard says, "The strangest part now, at 78, is that once I stopped fighting these changes and learned to work with them, I actually began enjoying this phase of life more than my 60s. There's a certain freedom in understanding your changing needs and honoring them without apology." No! The research supports Richard's experience. Dr. Laura Carstensen's studies show that older adults who understand and adapt to their changing needs consistently report higher life satisfaction than those who resist these natural shifts or those who simply accept them as decline. The key isn't preventing these changes. It's recognizing them as normal adaptations rather than deficits and developing strategies that honor your new needs while maintaining quality of life. With this perspective, these 12 changes become not just challenges to overcome, but doorways to a different but equally valuable phase of life. Conclusion. Which of these 12 changes resonated most with you? Have you been experiencing them without realizing they're completely normal? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your insight might help someone else feel less alone in these transitions. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might benefit from understanding these changes, whether they're experiencing them themselves or trying to support an aging loved one. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos that bring honest, research-backed insights about aging that you won't hear anywhere else. Until next time, remember, understanding is the first step to adaptation, and adaptation is the key to thriving at any age.